Today we will be discussing about history taking in nose, paranasal sinus and nasopharynx. First of all, what we will ask about is patient particulars. So in patient particulars, the important things are name, age, sex, address, occupation and religion. So name is important for patient information and as well as rapport building with the patient. Age is important because common diseases in different age groups are there in nose. So in a newborn, the general conditions related to the congenital diseases. In early childhood, there is enterocornal polyp, allergic rhinitis, adenoid hypertrophy. In adolescent age group, there is nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. In adults, it's mainly related to the traumatic conditions of nose with modal polyps and deviated nasal septum. In elderly, tumor and malignancy are more common. So the next thing you will be discussing about is the sex of the patient. Sex or gender is important as common diseases are present in different genders. For example, in male, in adolescent male, it is nasopharyngeal angiofibroma, whereas in female, atrophic rhinitis is more common. The other patient particular you will ask is address. Address is important as some diseases are there which are present according to the place of stay. In case of Nepal, rhinosporidiosis is common in areas in eastern Tarai. In India, some pockets of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and along the coastal border. Cold climate may cause conditions which result in frostbite. In extreme climate, whether it is hot or cold climate, there is chance of atrophic rhinitis. The other patient particular would be occupation. There are certain occupational diseases which are present. For example, in woodworker, like soft and hardwood worker, there is chance of malignancy of paranasal sinuses. In chemical industry or petroleum refineries, malignancy of nose and paranasal sinuses are common. In contact sports, fracture nasal bone and injury to nose is common. Then the last thing we would like to ask is religion of the patient. Some religious beliefs like use of incense sticks can aggravate nasal allergic conditions. After that, let's come to the symptomatology of nose and paranasal sinuses. So the common symptoms that the patient may present to you are nasal obstruction, nasal discharge, epistaxis or bleeding from the nose, postnasal discharge or postnasal drip, headache or facial pain. The patient may present with nasal mass, swelling or deformity of nose, disturbances of smell, change in voice like hyper or hyponasality, or sometimes may present with snoring. So let's discuss about nasal obstruction. If a patient presents to you with nasal obstruction, then these are the things you have to ask. Like you have to ask about the onset, duration, laterality, periodicity, character, severity, positional variation, aggravating and relieving factors, and past history. So let's discuss about each of them in detail. So onset and duration of nasal obstruction. It is important to know how the obstruction started and the duration of nasal obstruction. So conditions of abrupt or acute onset of nasal obstruction are foreign body of nose, trauma, acute rhinitis, allergic rhinitis, and conditions like septal hematoma. Insidious or chronic conditions for nasal obstruction are because of deviated nasal septum, turbinate hypertrophy, nasal polyps, nasal tumors. So these differential diagnoses will help you to further find out the cause of nasal obstruction in your history. So the other thing you'd like to ask in a patient with nasal obstruction is laterality. Which side of the nose is involved, whether it is unilateral or bilateral. Some causes of unilateral nasal obstruction are congenital atresia, vestibulitis, foreign body in nose, enterocornal polyp, deviated nasal septum. hypertrophy of inferior turbinate, unilateral sinusitis, synechiae, and neoplasm of the nose. Likewise, bilateral nasal obstruction can occur because of nasal valve collapse, septal hematoma or abscess, DNS with inferior turbinate hypertrophy, bilateral enlarged turbinates, nasal polyps in cases of ethmoidal polyp, allergic rhinitis or vasomotor rhinitis, chronic sinusitis, tumors of nose and paranasal sinus or nasopharynx, choanal atresia, adenoid hypertrophy, and altered humidity and temperature. Changing sides of nasal obstruction may be because of nasal cycle or sometimes in allergic rhinitis. Then ask the patient about the periodicity of nasal obstruction, whether the obstruction is always there or not. In cases of continuous or constant obstruction, the causes may be deviated nasal septum, nasal mass like benign or malignant conditions, turbinate hypertrophy, concha bullosa. If the obstruction is intermittent, then it may be because of allergic rhinitis or swollen turbinates. The next thing you have to ask is character of nasal obstruction. So when during the respiration is the obstruction more? If it is present more during inspiration, then it may be because of nasal valve collapse or bilateral nasal mass. Whereas if it is more during expiration, then it may be because of enterochoanal polyp due to the valve mechanism. During expiration, the choanal part of the enterochoanal polyp closes the choana, and thus the patient has difficulty during expiration. The other thing you have to ask is severity of the nasal obstruction, whether it is partial or complete. Causes of partial nasal obstruction are vestibular stenosis, DNS, which may be simple or obstructed type, inferior turbinate hypertrophy, nasal polyp or mass in early conditions. Complete nasal obstruction may be because of congenital nasal atresia, DNS when it is impacted type, inferior turbinate hypertrophy, choanal atresia, enterochoanal polyp, nasal polyposis or nasal mass, whether it may be benign or malignant conditions. Next, ask the patient about any positional variation of nasal obstruction. Is there any change in obstruction related to the change of position of body? So this condition may be present in allergic rhinitis or acute rhinitis with sinusitis where there is swollen turbinates. So if a patient lies down to one side, then the dependent side has venous congestion, and the side which is superiorly placed, the congestion is relieved and the patient has positional variation because of that. Ask about whether there is any aggravating or relieving factors or not. So aggravating factors in nasal obstruction may be upper respiratory tract infection, change in weather or season, emotional stress, or sometimes some type of food or drugs. Relieving factors of nasal obstruction may be use of medication like nasal drop or oral medications or topical sprays, positional change, or sometimes it may get relieved by itself. Then you have to ask the patient about past history of nasal obstruction. Are there similar episodes in the past? Is this episode different than that of the past episodes? Or if there is history of recurrent upper respiratory tract infection. This helps you to find whether the condition is a recurrent disease or a new one. So those are the things you have to ask if a patient presents to you with nasal obstruction. So let's proceed to another symptomatology, the nasal discharge. So what are you going to ask a patient if he or she presents to you with nasal discharge? So first of all, you have to ask about onset, duration, laterality, latency, character, smell, aggravating and relieving factors, and past history. So let's discuss about onset and duration of nasal discharge. Ask the patient, how did it start? What is the duration of the nasal discharge? So it is called acute when the discharge is there. Commonly it's for 7 to 10 days in cases of acute rhinitis, which may be viral or bacterial, and an allergic rhinitis. Subacute type of nasal discharge, it ranges from 1 month to 3 month duration. And chronic nasal discharge is the condition where the discharge is more than 3 months. So it is seen in chronic rhinosinusitis. Chronic sinusitis may be present in allergic rhinitis and atrophic rhinitis. So why does this matter? It matters because this will help you to manage the case, whether you require medical management or surgical management. Ask the patient about laterality of nasal discharge, which side is involved, whether it is unilateral or bilateral. Unilateral in cases of foreign body, polyps like antroconal polyp, mass lesion, benign or malignant condition of nose and paranasal sinuses, and in cases of sinusitis. Whereas bilateral nasal discharge may be present in allergic rhinitis, acute rhinosinusitis, chronic rhinosinusitis, atrophic rhinitis, and granulomatous diseases. Ask the patient about latency of discharge, meaning is the discharge always there or is it present sometimes only? So if it is constant, that is it's present throughout the year, the conditions may be perennial rhinitis, chronic rhinosinusitis, tumors or mass in nose and paranasal sinuses, and granulomatous diseases. Intermittent cause of nasal discharge may be because of acute rhinitis and seasonal allergic rhinitis. Then you have to ask the patient about the character of nasal discharge. How is the discharge like? Meaning quality of the discharge, whether it is watery, mucoid, mucopurulent, purulent, or blood stained. Watery discharge may be seen in early stages of common cold, vasomotor rhinitis, CSF rhinorrhea, and allergic rhinitis. Mucoid discharge may be seen in acute rhinitis, acute rhinosinusitis, chronic rhinosinusitis. Mucopurulent discharge may also be seen in acute rhinosinusitis and chronic rhinosinusitis. Purulent discharge may be present in atrophic rhinitis, neglected foreign body, or sometimes in burst furuncle. Blood-stained nasal discharge is seen in malignancy, neglected foreign body, trauma, nasal myiasis, and non-healing granulomas. Then talking about the smell of nasal discharge. Does the nasal discharge have a peculiar smell? So foul-smelling nasal discharge may be present in atrophic rhinitis, neglected foreign body, and chronic rhinosinusitis, whereas non-foul smelling may be present in acute rhinitis or allergic rhinitis and similar conditions. In atrophic rhinitis, although the discharge is foul smelling, the patient doesn't feel it because of merciful anosmia. Then you have to ask about the aggravating and relieving factors which are present for nasal discharge. Aggravating factors may be upper respiratory tract infection, change in weather or season, emotional stress, food or some drugs, and positional maneuvers, whereas relieving factors may be use of medications or sometimes it may be spontaneously gone. Then you have to ask about the past history of nasal discharge, whether there is similar episodes in the past, is this episode different from that of the past episodes, or any history of recurrent upper respiratory tract infection. Next we will be discussing about epistaxis. If a patient presents to you with epistaxis or bleeding from the nose, then you have to ask about onset, duration, character or type, amount of bleeding, laterality, aggravating and relieving factors, and you have to rule out bleeding disorders and also ask about the treatment history of the patient. Onset and duration. Ask the patient how did the bleeding start, whether it was acute or chronic. In acute, it may be spontaneous or idiopathic. Trauma, example fingernail or any physical trauma. Forceful nose blowing. In chronic condition, epistaxis may be because of septal hemangioma, nasal mass, granulomatous diseases of nose, or juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Prolonged duration of bleeding makes the patient hemodynamically unstable, so you have to take this factor into account before continuing with your history in case of epistaxis. Then ask the patient about the character or type of epistaxis, meaning you have to find out whether the bleeding is anterior or posterior. If it is anterior epistaxis, there is bleeding from anterior nares when patient is in sitting position. In posterior epistaxis, patient complains of bleeding from oral cavity as bleeding overflows from posterior nares when patient is in sitting position. So this is anterior and posterior epistaxis. So next you have to find out the amount of bleeding, whether it was small amount, which is usually seen in cases of fingernail trauma or sinusitis, or whether it was profuse, like in cases of anterior and posterior epistaxis because of road traffic accident, or in cases of juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. While taking the history, patient tends to exaggerate the amount of blood loss, so confirm the patient's history with hemodynamic status and investigations. Don't get carried away if a patient says he lost 1 bucket full of blood. Then ask about the laterality of bleeding, which side was involved, whether it was from the right or left or from the both sides. Unilateral epistaxis is present because of fingernail trauma, septal spur, septal hemangioma, and in cases of anterior epistaxis. Bilateral epistaxis is present in hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasis, systemic disorders, profuse bleeding, and in cases of posterior epistaxis. Find out what are the aggravating and relieving factors for epistaxis. Aggravating factors may be nose blowing, nose pricking, upper respiratory tract infection, change of weather or season, whereas relieving factors may be use of medications or sometimes spontaneous. The important thing you have to ask the patient of epistaxis is ruling out the bleeding disorders. So ask questions to rule out whether the patient has bleeding disorders. Questions like history of spontaneous bleeding or bleeding with trivial trauma from oral cavity or gums, spontaneous petechiae and ecchymotic patch in skin surface, bleeding in urine and stool. Ask the patient about his or her treatment history to rule out use of blood thinners like anticoagulants and thrombolytics. Ask the patient whether he or she is using any medication for cardiac failure. Ask for history of cardiac arrest, bypass surgery, valvular surgery, or medications used for deep venous thrombosis. So this completes your question for epistaxis. We will continue about other symptoms of nose and paranasal sinus in our next talk. Thank you.